a chorus of opposition to the implementation of the system here in Gauteng. And this chorus is getting louder and louder. We spoke to business this morning. COSATU is on the bandwagon. Solidarity is on the bandwagon. Whether you're talking about the Tolling Alliance, they are taking this matter to court, the Consumer Commission. Can you afford to ignore these calls?
Kulani, first of all, look, we are not ignoring any of these calls. I think what people are doing are exercising their rights. And we don't have any problem at all whatsoever with people exercising their rights. But what we should be asking the question is that what are the consequences of us not going ahead with this project? What are the consequences if we do not pay the debt that we have incurred? A debt, by the way, that all the motorists today who are using those roads are enjoying in the form of a much improved road. The fact that we've reduced our travel time, we've reduced our vehicle operating costs, we've reduced the carbon footprint. Where do we stand nationally and internationally in the eyes of people, in the eyes of our investors? If we cannot keep our word to our investors that we can repay our loans that we have.
I put that very same question to Narendra Rao a little earlier on of Saki, and he said to me, but that's not the issue. The issue is sort out the public concerns first. The repayments have to happen, but at the moment, it is the amounts of money that you want from people is way too high. It can't be afforded, and it will wreak havoc, if you will.
Okay, look, we've engaged with Saki on this particular project over a period of time. I think it's not correct of Seki now to turn around and say that we've got to delay this project or we've got to find another form. It's very unfortunate that none of these people who are objecting to this particular project are turning around and say, how do we fund our infrastructure as we go forward? Let me put that into context, if you don't mind, Kulani. We have a road network of 606,000 kilometers in South Africa. Now, that's a very, very extensive road network. Now, I know people will turn around and say that, yes, there's a problem or there's issues with the condition of the network. Not the entire network of South Africa is in the same condition as our improved ones. But, yes, we are going to be improving. Based on 37% of the information that we have for 37% of that network, we have a backlog of 149 billion rands. That's the backlog purely on maintenance. There's another 140,000 kilometers of roads, for which there is sort of what one would call no ownership in areas which have never been serviced. So how do we make sure that the areas which are underserviced, get the services, and those which never had the service, we do provide the service? Coming to the issue around whether the price is high. Look, what have we done in terms of trying to ease the burden? Government has taken a very, very bold decision in terms of making sure that the poor are not affected in the form of providing exemptions to commuter buses and taxis. That means they will pay zero tariffs when they're traveling on this road. We've also looked at it in terms of, government, that is, has looked at it in terms of making this affordable. Now, if you get an e-tag, you will first of all get the 48% discount on the e-tag. You will qualify for the frequent user discount, which I'll come back to, and the time of day discount and the capping. Now, the 48% discount translating to 30 cents a kilometer. That is what's happening. It's 30 cents a kilometer. Then, once you've reached a level of 400 rands in that particular calendar month, you will end up getting a further discount of 15% every time you go under a particular gantry. So that's an additional 15% discount that you will get. And once your total for that particular month has reached 550 rands, then you get 100% discount.
Yeah, but here's the thing, and this is what angers a lot of people again. The new terms and conditions that were revealed only Friday last week, among other things, that say there will be a punitive tariff of R1.75 a kilometer for those who do not have e-tags. Where does that come from?
Now, Kulani, with due respect, first of all, that was the Gazette where we've now made the tariffs official. The tariffs have been known to people over a long period of time. Let me go back, with your permission, to 2007. October 2007, we announced with the then Minister of Transport, in October 2007 that the tariff will be 50 cents a kilometer before discounts.
Yeah.
And a lot of people had published it, spoke about it, etc., and so forth. That was in October 2007. Since that time, and again in February of last year, we stated and made it very clear that those people who will not have an e-tag will not enjoy these benefits of a discount in there. So if you get an e-tag, you can enjoy the benefits of all of these discounts. Now, if you don't get an e-tag, there's an additional cost to us in terms of the collection, etc., sending out you a reminder that you have to go and pay for the use of this particular toll road, etc., and that is where that additional cost comes in. I don't think it is any different from any other business practice, except that, for instance, we don't charge any interest. Now, if we had to turn around and extend credit over a long period of time, the National Credit Act comes into play as well. That means we'd have had to do a whole lot of background checks in terms of whether people can afford to pay, etc., and so forth. And that would mean that we'd have to get a whole lot of private information as well to do a background check on people. And that was never the intention.
All right, we'll talk about the 175 because, again, the confusion comes in when SANRAL says, on one hand, it's not compulsory to get an e-tag, but on the other, if you don't have, we'll charge you 175. Yeah. Isn't it contradictory?
No, it's not contradictory at all. All we're saying is that, look, we're not stopping anybody, and we can't, and it's not the intention to stop anybody from using our roads. However, if you look at the SANRAL Act, right, which came into being way back in 1998, and don't forget that we've had toll roads in South Africa now for over 20 years in South Africa. And it's always been the law in our country that if you do not pay your tariffs for the use of that particular toll road, that it is illegal to do so. That has been the law for over 20 years now in our country. It has not changed at all. So all we're telling people that to use the toll roads over here, if you don't register, you're not going to enjoy the benefits of the discounts in it, and that is why there's a higher tariff that you have to pay. That is all we're saying. We're not saying that people must get an e-tag, etc., but without an e-tag, you don't enjoy all those other benefits.
Now, you're talking about the law for over 20 years. One of the things that, as I understand it, is stipulated is that where you're going to have toll gates or e-tolls, you have to have an alternative route. Are alternative routes clear within Gauteng?
Well, I mean, if you look at, for us, those of us who commute between Pretoria and Joburg, we all know that there are alternative routes available, that we do not have to use the toll road at all. And that is the beauty of this extent of our network that we have in South Africa. If you look at in terms of wherever I'm traveling from Johannesburg to whether along that, I don't always have to travel on that particular route. But by traveling on this route, I'm going to get the convenience of a road which is a much improved road, the convenience of me saving time, and, of course, the vehicle operating costs, etc. And there's a lot of people who have been informing us already as to how they're enjoying those benefits already.
All right. I'm going to go to the lines, by the way, on 0891 104 208 in a minute. But here's one other argument raised by, among others, COSATU, for instance. It is this, and the Alliance and businesses as well, is that a lot of the money that we're going to pay for these e-tolls is going to go to administration. Because on an annual basis, you pay in the region of about, 2 billion rand just for administration?
Now, that is completely wrong. And if you speak to COSATU, since we've made all the documents available to them, you'll notice that COSATU are not making the same kind of noise about it. On this particular project, there was a lot of misinformation being presented. One of the newspapers, I don't know, deliberately, or they made a genuine error, turned around and accused us of how expensive the construction was. First of all, they confused the units, meaning to say they confused miles with kilometers. In fact, an economist had then confirmed to say that the actual cost of building a road in South Africa is 3 times less than that in the United States. We've also made all of that information available in the steering committee report. When the steering committee was set up, the Gauteng government appointed a firm of auditors and the Department of Transport to have a totally independent review done of our model. And they found our model to be in order. There was nothing untoward. And also they found that we were a not-for-profit organization.
Right,
so these are rumors being spread around.
But let me go back to the question again. Let me go back to the question. How much money will go towards administration on an annual basis?
No, I'm going to come into to that. First of all, we've created 1,200 jobs. Now, I want to see anybody who's turning around and say that we must delay this project and not go ahead, ask them to go and look those people in the eye, and some of them got a job for the first time, Kulani. They must go and tell them that you retrench. Now, how much money is this thing? As far as the admin costing that are concerned, all it is that the operator will get a fee for the work he does. The operator does not get a percentage of the profits. He does not get a percentage of the revenue, and the revenues do not go into the bank account of the operator. The revenues that come into go straight into the bank account of SANRAL.
But do you know the figure?
No, our collection cost, people have been asking us for a long time. We've been saying this publicly. It's 15 cents in the rand. Now, that is for anybody who does a legal transaction, meaning to say what your e-tag and that. Now, if it's this thing, you don't have an e-tag, as I said earlier, there are those additional costs. But none of that money goes into the operator. All we're saying is that the guy who's using the roads legally, etc., and that must not be subsidizing for those people who break the laws of our country.
Okay, but let's clarify. 15 cents in a rand goes to the administration.
That's a collection cost. That's right.
Collection cost. But isn't that exactly the point that people are making? That it is expensive. That it is. We have these gantries that perhaps are way too expensive, elaborate, and so on.
No, at 15 cents, this thing in the rand, it is actually not expensive. Not the kind of prices that other people have been touting about, etc., and so forth.
All right. Let me hear from Darren in Port Elizabeth. Hello, Darren.
Yeah, I just wanted to. I just have a question. Why is there, and I don't know if your guest is in a position to answer this question, but why is there the focus on road transport over the development of public transport infrastructure? And second of all, why weren't consumers before the roads were built, why weren't consumers informed of the fact that there would be personal costs incurred for the consumers at some point in the future?
All right, Darren in Port Elizabeth. Mr. Ali, particularly the last one,
sure.
about making sure that consumers were taken along in this process.
Yeah. Look, as I said, way back in 2007, we had already announced the 50 cents a kilometer, and it was well publicized in the press, etc., and so forth. There's also certain processes in terms of our legislation that we required, that we had to follow. One was the EIA process, the Environmental Impact Assessment process. At that stage as well, when we had the public participation process, it was clearly spelled out to people that this is going to be a toll road over there. Then we had the other process in terms of the intent to toll, which only happens after we had received the record of decision from the Department of Environmental Affairs. Even at that stage, Kolani, people had an opportunity to object to that record of decision. Then during the intent to toll process, again, the public, including the other spheres of government, have an opportunity to make comment, lodge objections, etc., and so forth. So I don't think it's correct to say that people were not informed about it. Even
but what did they say?
Cup,
but what did they say? Because as I understand it, people objected right throughout the process.
No, Kolani, we can show you in terms of the number of people who had been protesting at that time in terms of objecting to it. Yes, there were some objections. We're not denying that at all. And there will be certain objections because we will always have a difference of opinion. But at the end of the day, we need to take into account that we need to fund this infrastructure of ours. We need to create jobs. Without funding the infrastructure, we're not going to be able to create the jobs. How do we fund this infrastructure?
Let's talk about this creation of jobs, because on the other hand, and again, if you listen to what Busa is saying and Saki is saying, is that jobs will be lost because there will be costs incurred by businesses, there will be costs incurred by individuals. So the 1,200 people that are employed, on one hand, will obviously mean that other people may lose their jobs.
Kulani, first of all, none of those organizations have refuted our research that we have done. None of them have done that. They themselves have not done any research to show that there will be other losses of jobs in that. Nobody has come on it. It is all anecdotal. Now, you take, for instance, the cost of business in there. Our research has shown, which I said earlier on, nobody has refuted. If you look at the research that we've shown, take let's business. First of all, business, if they get an e-tech, will get a 48% discount. Then on top of that, they will get the 14%, which they will claim back, which is their VAT. So if you look at that already, that's a 62% discount. Last but not least, the cost that business will incur in terms of transporting the goods in there is a tax-deductible expense. So where is this additional cost that they're talking about in loss of jobs?
People who are poor, because Cosatu has indicated that if you talk about the exemptions, they only apply to taxis, for instance, and buses, and that's the very small percentage of people who use a lot of people use their own cars, even though they're poor.
Yeah. Well, Kolani, again, Cosatu then said their own research will show that over 60%, I think it's close to 62, 65% of our commuters rely on public transport. That is what our commuters rely on. That's over 60% of.
But which routes do they use? They don't use the main routes. They use the back routes, and therefore will not necessarily benefit out of the exemptions.
No, Kolani. Then that means that particular the routes that we've got in terms of toll, the taxis and the buses who will use those are the ones who will qualify. Okay. That also means that traditionally they've always used the other routes.